Welcome back to Innovation in Government. I'm Francis Rose. The Pentagon's rollout of the new GenAI.mil tool means artificial intelligence is available on the desktop to everyone in the department. That includes professionals in records management areas. Mark Patrick is records officer at the Pentagon. Dan Fife is CEO of Fife Systems and Software. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Mark, I start with you. You heard the conversation earlier in the program about this new way of looking at records as data instead of as their own separate category. How's that manifesting itself in the Pentagon, in your view?
Well, first off, the department is large, and it has a confederacy of IT infrastructure. So it's not monolithic through the department. I think that data in general, records and data, the relationship, what's changing is volume and media types. So there's a desire to get a return on investment from AI within the organization. That depends necessarily on curation, automation, and governance of our records, because we want that data that are being used by AI tools to be, trustworthy. So it's an evolution. I think there's a sense of things speeding up, perhaps some hubris around what you can do with AI. And so it's going to be an interesting year as the workforce gets used to having that sort of pushed for daily use.
The tools that are available for, especially, you talked about automation and curation. Are those evolving over time to kind of sync with what you talked about the types of the media types that these records are presenting themselves in?
Well, you have policy associated with records, the NARA policies, OMB policies. We like to get beyond compliance with our own DoD data strategy that came out in 2023. Curation, automation, and governance is our key goals to that strategy. With regard to AI, it's a critical enabler because given the volume and the complexity, you're going to need that to assist with automation. And there are various ways it could be used. A common area is to use AI to enrich metadata and to categorize information so that it can be used more easily, contextualized, discovered more easily. So there's a dependency for our strategy that AI needs to continue to evolve in how we're using it in the department.
I'll come back to those 3 points in a moment. Dan, welcome. It's great to have you on the program. How does what you're seeing all across government sync with what Mark was just talking about as this transition, it's more transition in thinking, it sounds like, to start thinking about records as data?
Right. So we heard earlier from Alec talking about the evolution, kind of in the 2010s, everyone was doing data analytics, right? And so what people thought of as data was structured content that you could then gain insight into. And that was all about, like you said, about like structured. You can think about data coming off of machines, data you'd find in Excel. And that's what analytics feed off of. Well, in today's day and age, the AI feeds off of human-generated content, and it brings more value into human-generated content. So as analytics brought value into machine-readable data, AI brings value into human-generated content. So you have to then bring access to that data as the first thing and secure access to it. You're talking, when Mark talks about data at the DoD and different components and all the different, the size of that organization and the sensitivity of the information that goes through, the first step is, curating. Curating starts by capturing it and securing it. Capture, secure it, and then make sure that you can then point your AI tools at that human-generated content, which is letters people write, presentations people work on, analysis that they do and send around, internal communication. That type of information, that type of data is what AI will bring the most value to help you rapidly understand what someone said and glean insights as you bring data from multiple documents. So you bring multiple of these things together and say, what happened here? And what do we need to do next? and what could we do next? I mean, AI can answer those questions today as long as that data is accessible.
Is AI changing the infrastructure that's necessary for organizations like Mark to do what they need to do, especially as the media types also evolve?
Yeah, I mean, it's AI is changing. It is kind of making bringing decisions faster, right? And because it can help you read and understand without you having to do your own analysis, it can bring the salient points of any bit of information, whether it's, you know, in the DoD, it's very interesting. It could be information coming back from the warfighter. It could be information, by the way, it can be a hybrid of human-generated content and machine-readable content that comes back from these various systems. It could be intelligence that comes in that needs to be curated and go through various levels of analysis, but that can be all automated and then brought to the decision maker, right? Pretty much with the salient points brought to them, and that's something that is going to be huge and just very important for our country as we're trying to solve the world's, the Defense Department, the Department of War is doing defense and offense, and as we're trying to achieve across both of those, this is the technology that's going to keep powering us forward.
Mark, you referenced the size of the department. You're generating tons of new information on an ongoing basis. Mm-hmm. You also have a legacy set of information. You're in the same situation as a lot of technology people dealing with the legacy stuff and the new stuff. What's that merger, that integration look like?
We address that in the strategy. I mean, there's critical institutional memory in those legacy systems and records. So dealing with them and making judgments on what needs to be digitized to NARA standard if it's permanent, or just to a useful standard if it's being used operationally and not permanent, is ongoing. So we've looked for ways to help organizations get that stuff scanned if they choose to do that. There's the ROI there. I also think that that information remains relevant, so those decisions have to be made because NARA is not taking paper permanent records anymore. That's a factor that has to be considered. But there may be there are business decisions about when to spend on digitizing various record sets. So I think it forces an analysis on those legacy records. As far as the systems, if information is being migrated from a legacy system to a new system, our evolved approach is that we don't want to do records management in a system by system afterthought sort of basis. We want to build it in at acquisition across the enterprise, so that we're because that's a change, or that's a thing that's gone on in the past, is that records management would be an afterthought, and it's becoming a burden when you're trying to sunset a system and you haven't planned ahead for that. So we address that in the strategy and also in a policy document it's called IT planning for electronic records management. So there's kind of an approach in which the legacy systems and paper are just a part of this larger recognition of taking care of this institutional memory beyond compliance. It is about decision advantage, we call it, and that it is also about, evidence of the governance work for use to learn, for FOIA, legal discovery, all of those things. We want to be managing all that information, whatever media type it's in. The volume frankly makes the digits more difficult. In effect, NARA has declared we're going to be a digital government, moving forward. But there's a lot of follow-on to make that play out well. They have to be able to accession digital information, classify digital information. So there's a lot in dealing with both the legacy, and so it's all kind of one thing.
You referenced the business decision that's involved in digitizing information. What are the factors that go into that business decision? What are the things that you and your colleagues consider before you decide what gets digitized next?
So recognizing that there's a confederacy of records management enterprises, I would say in general, an organization or a sub-element of the Department of War has to look at what they have in legacy files and what utility does it have to their current business processes. And if it has current utility, it's going to be a lot easier to rip through it with a search engine or an AI tool if it's been digitized. So you starting to make value judgments, and then there may be unknown value once you start to digitize that you begin to discover. But initially, there's always going to be scarcity of resources in the federal government, so you have to start triaging the record sets that you have and decide which ones are necessary for current business processes, which can wait, things like that. So it's really just kind of a decision that you make based upon business need for that.
Dan, is there a role for AI to help in that process, in looking at what's on paper and getting it into kind of a triage or evaluation phase? Or is that still not the capability of AI? Are we not there yet with that?
No, we're there. I mean, we break down the AI kind of the AI capabilities and possibilities in this space in two ways. We talk about AI for records and records for AI, right? So this is an AI for records type conversation, like topic. We would say if we were, talk about, it's hard for folks to understand. A lot of the folks that have worked in the government can probably picture the mountains of boxes, right? That folks have, right? This is not a trivial process to go get this process the paper in those boxes. But once you can scan them, right, and they're AI in terms of scanning, you're talking about opening up boxes, staples and all the things that go into this. If we've all worked with this kind of thing, whether it's in your attic or in a warehouse with the Ark of the Covenant, there
mountains of paper clips,
right? Just mountains that happen after you process it. But once it's scanned and you have a digital copy of that image, you can do everything with it. I mean, AI today can, in terms of talking about applying AI for intelligent document processing and document data capture, it can automatically recognize, first of all, every character that's on the piece of paper. Handwriting recognition today is something that was not available back in the day. Pretty much auto tagging the data, which means what is important in here, what are the people, places, things, the content, the context of what we're talking about, the key, the salient points in each of these, a summary of that document, and AI can do all of that. It can also, of course, enhance the image itself, which is something that there's all sorts of image enhancements technology. But in terms of digitization, that's definitely one of the things that AI can do for records. And there's a litany of other things. I mean, Mark and I were talking about this, kind of off camera, but about how to do, applying AI to those projects, like doing it to boxes of records is something you've always wanted to do, but you just knew that we wouldn't be able to do it at the human scale. It would be too expensive to do it. So to at least look at every image and make a decision on what this is and do all this data entry just so you could then use the data later, right? But with technology and how good AI is today, it can do that. It can do the same thing for records that are already in files and human-generated content that's already digitized. There's a lot of organizations in the government that have files that are just living out on some network or somewhere that's been there for 20 years. The people left and the organization may have even been decommissioned or moved around, reassigned, but they're holding this information. They don't know what's in it. Well, what can go through that for us? AI can go through it for us, and it will help us curate that data automatically, right? It will help us, and it will help us make sense of it, make it searchable, make it valuable again. And then also, it's curation. One of the good things about curation also and records programs is one of the benefits is that you actually can get rid of the stuff that is not important anymore, and only save what really went into the decisions that were made by the folks that that help run the government.
I love the word automagically. That's a great place to leave it. Dan, thank you very much for joining me. Mark, you too, thanks for being here. When we come back, the balance between security and accessibility as government information goes digital. You're watching Innovation in Government, the future of records in the data lifecycle. We'll be right back.